There are more than 8 billion people out of the world. How much is it? From the 10 seconds you started watching this video, 40 people have already born and 20 have already died. But the question is, how do we, so different, get along together and still not kill each other?
And many psychologists, philosophers and historians have an answer to that question. Batman saved us all.
Wow!
Batman? Yeah, specifically my generation, that's the one with the fabric cape. What kind of nonsense? Don't worry, I'll explain. In this episode, you'll hear the story of how responsibility and justice came to be in our society, why kindness was created by Asian mobs, and when gods were born. Everyone had their own heroes as a kid, right? When I was a kid, Batman was the hero of my neighborhood. Almost every guy in kindergarten had a toy like that. It and Tetris were a kind of gentleman's set. But why is it so important and how is it connected with the theme of the episode? According to many social ideas, a person is born tabula rasa, it is a blank sheet. Only in the process of education and upbringing, he learns to distinguish between good and evil, forms some ideas and in general turns into a human being. As John Watson, the founder of the psychological theory of learning, put in, "Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed and my own specified word to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select. Doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even beggar man and thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors." Today this idea seems extremely naive to us, but in the old days it was taken seriously by many people. In the minds of society, Batman is a hero. He risks his life to save an entire city from criminals. Through Batman, Winnie the Pooh, Pinocchio, and thousands of other characters, we learned to interact with others and formed an understanding of good and evil. All of this can be called culture. Thanks to it and upbringing, we actually became human beings.
But what would happen if they suddenly disappeared? Would we go back to the primitive world, where many people believed that the question of who is right was solved with a fist, and cruelty were considered quite normal?
In the novel Lord of the Flies by William Golding, the boys who, because of an airplane accident, find themselves on a deserted island. All the adults flying with them died, and the children were left alone with each other. As a result, terrible things begin to happen. Power struggles, murders of the disobedient, divisions into hostile clans, the birth of the cult, and many other things. In short, without teachers and conditional Batman, there is no trace of morality and humanism. The novel, by the way, won the Nobel Prize. But you know what? When the author's fantasies had to undergo a reality check, everything he wrote turned out to be a nonsense. In 1965, as a result of an unfortunate adventure, 5 teenagers from boarding school found themselves on a tiny Pacific island, far from civilization. And unlike the heroes of The Lord of the Flies, the boys formed a commune, creating a food garden, a permanent fireplace, and even a gym. They prayed in the mornings, worked together, and when one of them broke his leg, they helped him without pay. They survived, spending 15 months on the island until a fisherman picked them up by accident.
But wait, maybe the boys were just overdeveloped and the cultural norms were already imprinted on them. No problem, let's consider infants.
Psychologist Paul Bloom decided to conduct an experiment on 1-year-old children. They were shown a cartoon in which geometric shapes were moving. The red ball was trying to climb a mountain, the blue square helped him by pushing him, and the yellow triangle got in the way. In another experiment, children watched one doll playing with a ball, with 2 other dolls next to it. One of the dolls constantly interfered with the one playing and tried to run away with the ball, while the other helped by returning the ball that had rollen away. And it's not surprising, after the experiments, the children choose the good square and the hooligan doll was hit on the head.
These experiments show that even before serious upbringing, infants had a basic understanding of right and wrong. But right and wrong are very controversial concepts, and personally, I can't even explain what they are. Let's look at some examples.
John and Alex are brother and sister. During the summer vacation, they are alone with each other in a coastal cottage. With the sea, nature, and hormones bubbling in their blood, the young people decide that it will be nice to have a new experience and have sex with each other. Alex has long been taking birth control pills, but John decided to use a condom just in case. They both liked this experience, but they decided not to repeat it again and keep it as a personal secret, allowing them to feel a special connection between each other. How would you rate that? Psychologist Jonathan Haidt described a similar situation to his subjects, and almost all of them criticized the act.
But why? Jonathan refuted all the rational reasons people gave in an attempt to defend their position. Both young men enjoyed the experience of intimacy and couldn't have children from it. In the end, the subjects would go in a state of moral stunt. They kept stubbornly saying that John and Alex had done wrong, but they couldn't explain why. How so? A little later you will be able to answer this question.
It's hard to believe, but the concepts of good and bad existed even before the appearance of humans. And they weren't created by gods, they were created by babies. Oh, look at these cottons! They're mammals, just like you and me. And like no other, they care about their offspring. We have whole neural circuits in our brain that are responsible for seeing babies as part of ourselves. But raising offspring, as well as sex, eating, sleeping, are all very important things for survival. That's why we get pleasure from them. And you know what else we get high from? Helping others. And really, there is nothing surprising about that. There are few things in nature that are only used for their intended purpose. So soon people were able to personify with themselves not only children, but also other members of the community. That's how empathy came about. We had our boundaries between ourselves and other beings erased. Fun fact: people who are more prone to yawning contagion are statistically more empathic. According to anthropologist Sarah Hardy, the ability to care about children created altruism. This is why it's so natural for us to help others. Psychology professor Stephanie Brown has shown in her work that people who care about others feel happier and live longer. The ability to personify ourselves to others is essentially what created goodness.
Okay, we figure out why people are able to support others and still not kill each other. But where does morality comes from?
We, our ancestors and other primates are social animals. For thousands of years we have lived in groups where there is a strict hierarchy. In a sense, it's a huge system of inhibitions and breaks. Our social code consists of three elements: empathy, the desire to maintain good relationships, and the threat of punishment. The social way of life has created a society built on enlightenment selfishness. We all want to enjoy the benefits of living in a group, but in order for this group to exist, its members must follow rules and make certain compromises. People themselves organized a kind of natural selection. All those who seriously violated the prohibitions were kicked out of the group or simply killed. So it happened in us and other primates for many thousands of years, and as a result prosocial behavior was fixed in us literally, at the biological level through the so-called social emotions. And today they work in us automatically, almost on an unconscious level.
Do you remember how the subjects censored the intimacy of John and Alex? This is an example of their manifestation.
People have an attitude of disapproval of incest as a phenomenon. It was formed in us many thousands of years ago, simply because of the high probability of giving birth to sick children as a result of this connection. Groups that didn't respect the prohibition against incest with siblings simply survived less often. Just natural selection. Moreover, nature has developed an even stronger mechanism that prevents inbreeding. Most often we are simply not sexually attracted to people with whom we lived and were brought up together in early childhood. And it doesn't matter whether they are our siblings or people who are not related to us by blood. More often we evaluate actions with our inner feelings, not with the help of long logical reasoning. The notions of morality and justice were formed among people long before they learned to use fire, write, speak, and even stand on two legs. And in general, these rules are universal for all: Russians, Americans, Chinese, and even tribes in the Amazon forests. Both modern and ancient cultures of the most different peoples approved such qualities as justice and honesty, and, on the contrary, condemned cruelty and selfishness.
After all this, you may rightly ask, if people are so kind by nature, then why is it wars and injustice has followed mankind through history?
One day, an inhabitant of one of the traditional tribes was asked, what game can be caught in the forest? He replied that there were birds, lizards, and strange two-legged members of a foreign tribe. Almost all of our history, mankind has lived in small groups of no more than 100 people. Members of other tribes were sometimes not even recognized as humans. Empathy is very partial and is often shown only to those whom we consider to be members of our tribe. In one experiment, a soccer fan watched two other subjects being hit with small electric shocks. One of the subjects was a fan of the same club as the observer, and the observer didn't show empathy for him. But the view of the suffering of the other subject, who was a fan of the rival club, didn't just cause the observer no compassion. It activated the pleasure centers in his brain. Another reason why the world is not a bastion of goodness is psychopaths. There are those people who, due to the specific of their development and brain structure, are simply unable to show empathy and sympathize with other people. And there are quite a lot of such people, about 1 or 2% of the population.
Altruism and morality originated so long ago that evolution has hardwired itself into our brains. There are qualities we're born with. Babies who can't walk yet can already distinguish between good and bad characters, and without much reasoning, people tell you what behavior is unacceptable. I'm not saying that upbringing and education are unnecessary, much less that science can explain how social morality should be structured, but it allows us to learn the nature of our altruism and to stop being afraid that if we lose a conventional Batman, our society will stop existing. Sarah J. Weber for this view. And remember that the world is much more interesting than you may think.